All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get into these notes for today. So I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person today, but hopefully this will be a sufficient substitute to be able to do these notes, and on block day we'll kind of get all caught back up and make sure everyone is where we need to be. So first off, for today, the notes are going to be 5.2, and we're going to be talking about long division, and specifically we're going to be talking about long division with polynomials. So one of the reasons that we did long division yesterday in class just with numbers is because you can use that same kind of process and concept with the polynomials that we've been looking at. And with polynomials, as a reminder, before Thanksgiving we talked about how to add them, how to subtract them, and how to multiply them, and now we're going to use long division to be able to divide them. Okay, so date today is the 29th if you'd like to add that. Objective we've already kind of talked about. And one other thing I will say is if you're not watching this with headphones, I would recommend that you put the closed captions on so that you can hear or read at least everything that I'm saying. So first off, a little review that's going to be helpful here is when we're looking at division problems, just important pieces to understand. When you have a number, or I'm sorry, a value divided by a value, we call the first value the dividend, and this was in the video yesterday, and then the dividend, is always divided by the divisor. Okay, so just important to note, if I start using those terms, the dividend is the larger value, and the divisor is the smaller value, that is what it is being divided by. And then as for your answers, this is important as well. So your answer is always going to be in the form of, first off, what we call a quotient. So the answer to any division problem is what we call a quotient. And then if there's any remainder left over, the remainder is always going to be, plus the remainder over the divisor. Okay, so anytime you are working through an answer, you'll always have a quotient. Sometimes it'll come out to be just a specific value, but sometimes you're going to have a remainder, and the way that you write that remainder is always the remainder over the divisor there. Okay? Okay, so now that we have these ideas down, let's look at a few different examples here. So first off, let's say I have these polynomials, and if you need to pause your video to write these down, you can. But let's say I have 6x squared minus 7x minus 5 divided by 3x minus 5. So just like you saw with long division yesterday, this first value here is going to be our dividend, and then our second value here is our divisor, and the dividend always goes on the inside of these brackets that we put here, this kind of symbol that we put here. So for instance, our dividend in this case is 6x squared, so I'll say 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. Okay, and then as for our divisor, that second value, that's always going to go on the outside. So 3x minus 5. Okay, so the setup is the same as what you saw when you're doing long division with numbers. And now the way that we use long division with polynomials here is we're going to look at the first term of the term on the outside, and we're going to ask, what do I need to multiply it by to match this first term on the inside here? So the question I'm asking is, what do I need to multiply 3x by in order to get it to be 6x squared? Well, I need to multiply it by 2, and then I need to multiply it by x. So the value I need to multiply it by is 2x here, and so I'm going to put this value up top. Okay, I need to multiply that by 2x. And if I do that, when I multiply 2x times 3x, I would get 6x squared, and I'm going to put that value right here down below, just like you would do in long division. And I need to do that same thing here with the negative 5 as well. So I need to multiply the negative 5 times the 2x. So negative 5 times 2x would be negative 10x. Okay? So I set this up here. I put these values down below. And then just like in long division, we're going to subtract the values from the top to the bottom. So 6x squared minus 6x squared is going to cancel out, and that's why we match those values up, and so that they would cancel each other out. And then when I look at negative 7x minus negative 10x, we've seen this idea a bunch. Minus a negative 10 is actually the same thing as plus 10. So negative 7 plus 10 is a positive 3x. Okay? And then as we do in long division as well, once you subtract, then you're going to bring this next or this last value down. So here I have a negative 5, so I'll bring that down. And then I'm going to ask the same question. So I'm going to look and I'm going to see I'm going to look at my first value on the outside, so that 3x, and I'm going to ask, what do I need to multiply by to match this value right here? Well, 3x is already the value of 3x, so what I would have to multiply it by is just 1. So I'll say plus 1 here, and then I'm going to multiply that 1 by everything on the outside here, so the 3x and the negative 5. So 3x times 1 is 3x, negative 5 times 1 is negative 5, and then just like we did in long division yesterday, I'm going to subtract. So so now we're down here, so 3x minus 3x, we match those up so they would cancel out. And then negative 5 minus negative 5, those would cancel out as well, or in other words, you get 0. And this is what you're hoping for. 0 means that you don't have any remainder, and so your final answer is just going to be 2x plus 1. Okay, so that will happen from time to time, and that's the hope, is that you have one that comes out to be a remainder of 0. And if we don't have a remainder of 0, we'll talk about how we write that answer on the next problem. But my final answer here for this would be 2x plus 1. Okay, all right, so let's practice that again and make sure we kind of understand how this is working here. All right, next one, let's say we have this. Let's say we have x squared minus 5x minus 28 divided by x plus 3. So again, my divisor is the first value, so I'll put that on the inside, so x squared minus 5x minus 28. And then my dividend is the first value, my divisor is the second value, and that's going to go on the outside. And really, if you mess up the names of the terms, that's okay, as long as you understand where these values go. So x plus 3 is my divisor, and that's going to go on the outside. Okay, so again, once we get to this step, we're going to ask that question. We're going to look at the first term on the outside and the first term on the inside and ask myself, what do I need to multiply the first term on the outside to get it to look like the first term on the inside? Well, to multiply x, to get to x squared, all I need to do is multiply it by 1x. So I'm going to put 1x up top, and then I'm going to do that multiplication, and I'm going to put my values down below. So x times x is going to give me x squared, so I'll put that value here. And then x times 3 would give me 3x, so I'll put that value down below. So we go ahead and set this up, and I'm going to subtract the top from the bottom. X squared minus x squared is going to cancel out. That should always be the case. That's the reason that we did that. And then negative 5 minus 3x, that's just going to go more negative. That's going to be negative 8x. So I'll have a negative 8x there. Okay, and then once we're done with our subtraction, we're always going to bring down the next value. In this case, we only have one more value left. So I'll bring down that negative 28. And then it's the same process. I want to look at this first value, x, and I wanted to get it to match this value right here, negative 8x. And so I know I would multiply it by negative 8. So I'll put that value up top, negative 8. So negative 8 times x is negative 8x. And then negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. And then same process as before, we have these values, and now we're going to subtract them. Negative 8x minus negative 8x is going to cancel out. That's good. And then negative 24 minus negative 28 minus negative 24. Remember, we're treating that like plus. So negative 28 plus 24 is going to be negative 4. Okay? And so this time we notice our remainder is not 0. This is our remainder here, and that's negative 4. And so we need to talk about how we write that answer, and that's going to go back to what we saw excuse me, at the beginning when I look at how we write our answers here. We have our quotient, and then our remainder goes on top, and our divisor goes on the bottom. So if I have that same idea here, the way I'm going to write this is my quotient, the x minus 8. So I would say x minus 8, and then I'll always just put plus there, and I'm going to have a fraction. On the top of my fraction is going to be the remainder, so that would be negative 4. And on the bottom of my fraction is always going to be the divisor, which, remember, is that number on the outside, or in this case, the value on the outside, which is x plus 3. Okay, so my final answer will look a little strange, but it's going to look something like this. X minus 8 plus negative 4 over x plus 3. This would be the exact same kind of look of an answer if you were doing long division with numbers. Now we're just doing that same thing with values and polynomials. Okay? All right, so one more example here to get you guys set, and then we will be good to go for today. And you guys can use the rest of the time to work on the assignment. Okay, so last one, if you need to pause your video to write this, feel free to do so. But let's say we have 24x to the fourth plus 8x to the third plus 6x minus 4 divided by 3x plus 1. So again, our dividend is the first value, so that's going to go underneath. So 24x to the fourth plus 8x to the third plus 6x minus 4. And one thing I notice here that I'm actually going to kind of have you guys try to look for when you're writing these values in is notice as I go in standard form and the exponents are decreasing, I actually skip over the x squared term. So I see I have x to the fourth, then the third, then there's no x to the second, and then I go immediately to x and then the number. If you skip over a term, to make it easier for you to visualize how this is going to work, I want you to actually write in what this term is. So if there's no x squared term, that could be the same thing as 0x squared, and I actually want you to write that in. So in this case, I'm going to write in here 24x to the fourth plus 8x to the third plus 0x squared, and then plus 6x minus 4. Because that value is still there, it is a 0, but it is there, and so we need to make sure that we catch that in order when we're dividing. And I'll show you kind of how that comes up in this case. Okay, and our divisor is on the outside, so that's 3x plus 1. Okay, so we'll do the same process here. We look at 3x and we look at 24x to the fourth. So I need to multiply that by 8, and then I need to multiply it by x to the third for those to match. So I'm going to say 8x to the third up here. So 8x to the third times 3x is going to give me 24x to the fourth. 8x to the third times 1 is going to give me 8x to the third. So I'll write those in here. And we notice here we have these values, and I'm always going to be subtracting in this step. So we subtract 24x to the fourth minus 24x to the fourth. Those will just cancel. And then 8x to the third minus 8x to the third. Those will actually cancel as well. And if this happens, I do need a value here. And so I could just say 0x to the third. Okay, so I have this here. I bring down the next value. And this is why I wrote this value in order. So now I have an x to the third and an x to the second. And then we're going to keep doing this process. Even though we have a 0, we're going to keep working through this. So here, the next step, if I look at this first value again, 3x, try to match it up with 0x to the third, that would be 0x squared. So I'll just say that, 0x squared. I'll multiply these here. 3x times 0x squared is going to be 0x to the third. 0x squared times 1 is just 0x squared. And so we're just going to see a lot of things canceling out here. So 0 minus 0 just cancels out. 0 minus 0 cancels out. So this is just 0x squared. And then I bring down the positive 6x. And the reason I'm doing this is just to make sure that we are going in the correct order and that my terms have the correct exponents on them. So now I go to the next spot. Same kind of idea. I need to match up 3x with 0x squared. So that's just going to be 0x. So I'll say plus 0x. 0x times 3x is 0x squared. 0x times 1 is just 0x. As always, we're going to subtract these here. So I'll subtract 0x squared and 0x squared would cancel out. And then 6x minus 0x is just going to give me 6x. So finally I get to a place where I actually have a value, which is good. And then I'll bring down the next term. So in this case, the next term would be negative 4. And I do that same kind of process. I look at 3x and I need to ask what I would need to multiply that by to create 6x. And that would be the number 2. So I'll put plus 2 on top. 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times 1 is 2. And then we subtract. The 6x's cancel, as they always should. And then negative 4 minus positive 2 is going to be negative 6. So again, I see that I have a remainder that is not 0 here, and that's okay. Okay, so I get to my final answer here. And sorry, it's not all fitting kind of on the screen here, but notice I have the 0x squared and that 0x in my quotient, or my final answer. Okay, as you guys would suspect, you don't have to write those in your final answer, but we just wanted to make sure that we were going in the correct order and not skipping over anything. So my final answer here would be 8x to the third. You don't have to worry about the zeros because those, don't matter. Those are not values. And then you can go immediately to just plus 2. And then don't forget your remainder here. So as a reminder, the way that you write your remainder in your final answer is you put plus, you put the remainder on top, and you put the divisor on the bottom. And as a reminder, the divisor is this term on the outside here. So I would put 3x plus 1 on the bottom. And so my final answer here is 8x cubed plus 2 plus -6 over 3x plus 1. Okay, so that is all we're going to be doing for long division. Tomorrow on block day, I'll come in and I'll make sure that we all have this down. But for the rest of the time today, I want you to try to work on that homework a little bit and see if you can get the hang of this a little bit. And then I'll come in and check. Hopefully I'll be healthy enough tomorrow to come in and check you guys on everything, and we'll get all caught up and make sure we are where we need to be. Okay? And if you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to let me know.